Quietly. Absolutely. His name was spoken only when necessary and never without a glance over the shoulder. In the underworld, reputation was currency, and his was worth more than blood. Men who crossed him did not get second chances. They did not get explanations. They simply vanished, leaving behind silence that warned others to stay in line. He had inherited the empire young, too young, some said. Barely past 30 when his father's reign ended in violence that was whispered about but never confirmed. The old man had ruled with cruelty sharpened by paranoia, a tyrant who believed fear was the only loyalty that lasted. By the time the son took over, the streets already knew his name. They expected weakness. They got something worse: precision, control. A man who did not raise his voice because he never had to. Where his father had been brutal and loud, he was cold and exact. Every move calculated. Every alliance weighed like a weapon. He did not enjoy violence, but he never hesitated when it was required. Mercy, he believed, was just another word for risk, and risk was how men ended up in unmarked graves. Love was no different. Love made men careless. Love created leverage. He had watched it happen to his father, watched women turn into liabilities and children become targets. Bloodlines were not blessings in his world. They were curses that followed you into the dark, waiting to be used against you. That belief had hardened into certainty after the diagnosis. 5 years earlier, after a severe illness that nearly killed him, doctors had run tests. Long tests. Quiet conversations behind closed doors. The verdict had been delivered with clinical calm. Sterile. No chance of children. No heirs. The end of the line. He had felt nothing when they told him, or at least that was what he told himself. In truth, something had cracked that day, something small and ugly and permanent. Whatever fragile part of him might have wondered about family, about legacy beyond power, had died on that hospital bed. He convinced himself it was a relief, one less weakness, one less chain. From that moment on, women became distractions. Temporary, interchangeable. He never stayed long enough for names to matter. He never allowed them close enough to ask questions. They were moments, not connections. Nights, not futures. It was easier that way, safer. His men assumed it was indulgence. The tabloids called it excess. Neither understood the truth. He kept people at a distance not because he enjoyed emptiness, but because emptiness could not betray him. Control was survival. That was the rule he lived by. Every corner of the empire reflected it. Meetings held in rooms stripped of warmth. Offices designed like fortresses. No photographs. No personal artifacts. Not even a trace of the boy he once was. The man he had become did not allow ghosts. And yet at night, when the city quieted and the guards reported in with routine updates, the silence pressed in on him. His penthouse was expansive, glass and steel overlooking a world he owned, but did not belong to. He would stand by the windows with a drink untouched in his hand, watching lights flicker in other people's homes. Families. Laughter he could not hear but somehow felt. He told himself he preferred it this way. That loneliness was a small price to pay for power. That men like him were not meant for softness. Still, the rumors followed him. That the great king of the underworld would leave nothing behind but ashes. That when he died, there would be no one to inherit the crown, no son to continue the bloodline. Some whispered it with curiosity, others with relief. He pretended not to care, but legacy haunted him in quiet ways, in the careful expansion of territory, in the obsessive documentation of assets, in the way he planned everything as if he were building something meant to last forever, even though he believed his own name would end with him. Self-loathing crept in where hope once might have lived. He told himself he was broken by design, that whatever goodness he might have had was burned out by the world that raised him. Better to be feared than wanted. Better to rule alone than risk needing someone. And yet, beneath the tailored suits and unflinching gaze, beneath the reputation that made grown men tremble, there was a truth he never allowed himself to say out loud. He was afraid. Afraid that if he let someone see him, truly see him, they would find nothing worth staying for. Afraid that connection would expose the emptiness he worked so hard to control. Afraid that despite all his power, all his wealth, all his dominance, He was a man standing at the end of his bloodline, ruling a kingdom that would die with him. So he tightened his grip, hardened his heart, ruled without mercy, and convinced himself that this was strength. He had no idea that everything he believed was about to be shattered by one woman, and a truth he had been taught never to expect. She did not belong in his world, and everyone knew it except him. The first time he noticed her was not because she tried to be seen. It was because she refused to look afraid. Most people in the room watched him without realizing they were doing it. Their bodies leaned away from him, even when their words leaned forward. Respect in his world was never freely given. It was extracted. She stood near the edge of the room, holding a tablet against her chest. Calm. Still. Focused. As if the men with guns under their jackets were nothing more than background noise. She worked for one of the legitimate fronts tied to the empire. A logistics firm clean on paper and dangerous beneath the surface. Most employees kept their heads down, did their work, left without asking questions. She did neither. When one of his lieutenants dismissed a shipment delay with a lie, she corrected him, quietly, precisely, in front of everyone. The room went silent. Men did not contradict his inner circle. They especially did not do it without permission. He expected fear to cross her face when she realized what she had done. Instead, she met his gaze. Steady, unflinching. Her voice did not shake when she explained the numbers. She spoke like someone who trusted facts more than power, as if truth alone would protect her. Something dangerous stirred in him. Not anger. Interest. After the meeting, his men waited for the order. They assumed she would be reprimanded. Removed. Replaced. He waved them away. Later that night, he asked for her file. Not because he needed it. Because he wanted it. She had no criminal history. No powerful family. No debts tying her to the under. She had built her life through discipline, not desperation. That made her unpredictable. When they crossed paths again, it was by design. A quiet corridor. A calculated coincidence. She greeted him with polite professionalism. No flirtation. No nervous smile. No attempt to impress. Most women in his orbit either wanted his protection or his money. Some wanted both. She wanted neither. That unsettled him more than any threat. He tested her, asked questions meant to intimidate, pressed close enough to feel her reaction. She did not retreat. Her heart raced. He could see it in her throat. But she stayed. Fear existed in her. It simply did not rule her. They spoke briefly. About work. About efficiency. About mistakes. When he walked away, he expected the feeling to fade. It did not. Over the following weeks, he found himself aware of her presence before he saw her. Her voice carried differently. Her silence felt louder. She did not seek him out. That was the worst part. Control had always been his greatest weapon. With her, he felt something slipping. Not because she challenged him openly, but because she existed without bending. One evening, after a brutal negotiation left blood on the marble floor, he stayed behind, hands steady, face empty, while his men cleaned the consequences. She walked in unexpectedly, stopped, took in the scene. Their eyes met. He waited for horror, for judgment, for fear. She swallowed, then asked if he was injured. No one had ever asked him that. The question hit harder than any insult. He dismissed her with a sharp command. More force than necessary. She left without protest. That night the silence followed him home. He told himself it was irritation. A disruption. A variable he had not accounted for. But deep down something older stirred. Something he had buried with his belief that bloodlines were curses. That connection was weakness. She represented a world where power was not extracted through fear, where respect was earned through integrity. That world threatened everything he had built. And yet, he found himself watching for her, listening for her, wondering what it would feel like to exist without armor. He did not know it yet, but the first crack in his empire had already formed. Not through betrayal, not through violence, but through a woman who refused to bow and had no idea she was standing in the path of a man who had never been challenged by anything he could not destroy. Until her. The night everything changed began with blood on his hands and a silence that felt heavier than gunfire. A deal had gone wrong. Not loudly, not publicly, but quietly enough to leave 2 men dead and 3 alliances shaken. He stood alone in the private room of the club long after everyone else had left. Jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled, knuckles scraped raw where he had struck a man who begged too late. Power usually steadied him. Violence usually cleared his head. That night it did neither. He felt restless, unsettled, as if something inside him refused to stay buried. When the door opened, he expected one of his men. He did not expect her. She froze the moment she saw him. Her eyes dropped to the blood, then lifted to his face. For the first time, he saw fear fully form in her expression. Not screaming, not hysterical, but real. He waited for her to leave. She did not. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. The words landed wrong. Too gentle, too human. No one ever asked him that. He told her to leave. His voice sharper than necessary. She hesitated, then stepped closer instead. There was blood on the floor, on the table, on him. She took a breath, steadying herself. Reached for a clean cloth from the bar. "You should wash your hands," she said. "Infections are worse than bullets." Something snapped. Not Ray. Not control. A wall. He let her. She moved carefully. Not touching him. Not rushing. As if she understood instinctively that one wrong movement could cost her everything. They stood close. Close enough for him to smell her perfume clean and unfamiliar. Close enough for her to feel the tension coiled beneath his skin. When she finished, she tried to step back. He stopped her. "Why are you not afraid of me?" he asked. She looked up, her eyes honest, wide, unshielded. "I am afraid," she said. "But fear does not give you the right to treat people like they do not exist." No one had ever spoken to him like that. He should have sent her away. Should have reminded her who he was, what he could do. Instead, he laughed. A quiet, humorless sound that surprised them both. They talked. Not about business. Not about power. About exhaustion. About the cost of always being strong. About how loneliness could exist even in crowded rooms. He did not plan to tell her anything real. It simply happened. He spoke of his father. Of growing up learning that mercy was weakness. That love was a tool others used against you. She listened. Not interrupting. Not judging. When he told her he could not have children, that his bloodline ended with him, she saw the wound beneath the statement. "That must have hurt," she said. He shrugged, pretended it meant nothing. But something in her gaze told him she did not believe the lie. The night stretched. The city quieted. At some point, conversation turned into silence. Silence turned into closeness. Closeness turned into something he had sworn off long ago. He did not touch her first. She reached for him. It was not desperate. Not reckless. It was slow. Careful. As if they both understood this was something they would never be able to undo. When it was over, when the world crept back in through the windows, he felt something dangerously close to peace. That terrified him. Morning brought clarity. And fear. He woke before she did. Watched her sleep. Felt something tighten in his chest. This was how men lost wars. He dressed quietly. Cold returned to him like armor. When she stirred, he was already distant. Last night was a mistake, he said. What happened stays here. Her face fell. Not in shock, but understanding. She nodded. Did not beg. Did not argue. That hurt more than anger would have. When she left, the room felt emptier than before. He told himself he had done the right thing, that he had protected himself. But deep inside, something whispered that he had just pushed away the only moment of truth he had allowed himself in years, and that the cost of that decision had not yet revealed itself. By morning, he had rebuilt the walls so completely that even he almost believed they had never fallen. The man who entered the office that day was not the one who had stood bleeding in the quiet room the night before. This man was sharp, controlled, untouchable. He moved through the building with familiar authority. Men straightened when he passed. Voices lowered. Eyes dropped. She saw him from across the floor and felt the shift immediately. The warmth of the night before felt like a dream dissolving under harsh light. He did not look at her, did not acknowledge her presence, did not slow his steps. It was as if she had never existed. She told herself it was expected, that men like him did not chain. That vulnerability was borrowed time. Still, the coldness stung deeper than she anticipated. When he finally spoke to her, it was during a meeting. Public. Deliberate. His tone was professional. Detached. Her name spoken without memory. She answered his questions clearly. Efficiently. As if nothing had passed between them. Inside her chest, something fractured. He watched her closely. Not with desire, but calculation. She was composed. Too composed. That unsettled him. After the meeting, he summoned her privately. The room was stark. No windows. No warmth. You will maintain distance, he said. Whatever you think happened did not. The words were precise, cruel in their restraint. She nodded, her face calm, but her hands trembled. I understand, she replied. That was the moment something inside him recoiled. He had expected anger, tears, accusations. Her acceptance felt like a verdict. Over the following weeks, he enforced the separation with ruthless consistency. Assignments changed. Paths no longer crossed. Her work was filtered through others. He convinced himself it was discipline, that cutting ties prevented weakness. But at night, the silence returned sharper than before. He found himself replaying her voice, the way she had asked if he was hurt, the way she listened without trying to fix him. Control slipped in small ways. He grew harsher with his men, less patient, more violent. The Empire noticed. She noticed too. From her side, the distance felt like erasure. She had not expected romance, or promises, but being treated as if she were nothing after being seen so completely left a bruise she could not name. She buried herself in work, ignored the quiet nausea in the mornings, the fatigue that lingered longer than it should. When realization finally came, it was in the privacy of her apartment. 2 lines. Clear. Unforgiving. Her breath left her body in a rush. Shock gave way to fear. Then resolve. He needed to know. She waited. Chose the right moment. Requested the meeting formally. When she stood before him again, there was no trace of the man from that night. Only the king. She spoke the truth simply. Without accusation. Without expectation. I am pregnant. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then his eyes hardened. The cruelty that followed was surgical. Accusations fell like knives. Gold digger. Manipulation. Extortion. He told her she was lying. that he could not have children, that she would not trap him. The words shredded whatever hope remained. She tried to speak, to explain. He did not listen. Security was called. Orders given. Her world collapsed in minutes. As she was escorted out, she looked back once. Not in anger, not in pleading, but with a quiet devastation that would haunt him later. At the time, he told himself he had survived another threat, that he had protected his empire. He did not yet understand that in choosing power once again, he had set in motion the very destruction he feared most. She left the building without looking back, because if she did, she knew she would break. The city swallowed her whole the moment the doors closed behind her. Traffic moved. People laughed. Life continued, as if nothing had been ripped apart. Her hands shook as she walked. Not from fear anymore. From clarity. He had made his choice. And it was not her. That night, the sickness returned stronger than before. She knelt on the bathroom floor, gripping porcelain, as waves of nausea tore through her. When it passed, she stayed there, back against the tub, breathing through the truth she could no longer deny. This was not stress. This was not exhaustion. This was life. The test confirmed what her body already knew. 2 lines. Sharp. Unforgiving. She pressed a hand to her stomach and felt something shift inside her. Not movement. Purpose. Fear came first. Pure and overwhelming. Then came something steadier. Resolve. She did not cry for long. There was no room for it. By morning, she understood one thing with brutal clarity. Staying meant danger. Not just for her. For the child. The underworld did not forgive weakness. And it never forgot mistakes. She packed quickly. Only what mattered. Clothes. Documents. Memories small enough to carry. Every sound outside her apartment felt too loud. Every shadow felt watched. When she left the city, she did not take the highway. She chose back roads. Unmarked paths. Places no one with power would bother to look. The car drove until it could not anymore. It was fate or exhaustion that stopped her in a coastal town where the air smelled like salt and bread, where people looked at strangers with curiosity instead of calculation. The engine died outside a bakery, steam rising from the hood like a final surrender. She stepped out and breathed deeply. For the first time in weeks, her chest did not feel tight. This town did not know him, did not fear his name, did not care who ruled what. Here she was not an asset, not a threat, not a mistake. She found a small apartment above the bakery. The landlady noticed her trembling hands, her pale face, the quiet determination in her eyes. The rent was low, the kindness unexpected. Work came slowly. Questions followed her resume like shadows. Why here? Why now? She learned to simplify the truth. I needed a chain. I wanted quiet. Eventually, someone believed her. Days passed. Then weeks. Her body changed. Slowly at first. Then unmistakably. She learned the rhythm of the town. Morning, light over the water. Evenings that ended early. People who noticed when you were missing. At night, she spoke to the life growing inside her. Not out loud, but with intention. You are safe. I will protect you. No matter what. Back in the city, he drowned himself in work. Deals closed. Enemies silenced. Borders expanded. The empire grew. But the silence in his home deepened. He told himself the woman had been a threat, that removing her had been necessary. Yet sleep refused him. He dreamed of her eyes. Not accusing. Just broken. Somewhere deep beneath the armor, a question began to form. One he refused to answer. What if she had told the truth? He crushed the thought immediately. Facts were facts. Doctors did not lie. Men like him did not get miracles. And yet, in a town far from violence, far from marble floors and bloodstained deals, she placed a hand over her growing belly and smiled for the first time since leaving. Not because life was easy, but because it was hers. Neither of them knew it yet, but everything they believed about fate, power, and blood was already unraveling. And the secret she carried was stronger than the empire that had tried to erase her. The lie he told himself began to rot from the inside. At first, it was easy to believe his own anger. Anger was familiar, useful. He told himself she had tried to trap him. That desperation made women reckless. That power attracted deception. His men agreed. They always did. But the nights grew louder. Sleep came in fragments. Dreams filled with a woman standing alone in a city that did not see her. With a child he could not touch. He woke with his jaw clenched, his chest tight. Work no longer quieted the noise. Meetings blurred. Threats felt hollow. Victories brought no satisfaction. The empire expanded, but something essential was shrinking. One evening, while reviewing old documents for a legal dispute, he opened a sealed folder marked Private Medical, a folder he had not touched in years. The papers inside were yellowed, edges worn, but the name leapt out at him. The doctor, the one who had told him his bloodline ended, the one who had spoken with such certainty. A detail caught his eye. A date that did not align. A signature that felt wrong. Control demanded answers. By morning, his legal team was digging. Records requested. Files opened. Names pulled from shadows. What they found cracked the ground beneath him. The doctor had been investigated. Quietly. For falsifying results. For accepting bribes. For revenge-driven diagnoses. There were ties to his father. Old disputes. Threats disguised as warnings. The test results. The diagnosis. The certainty he had built his life around. All of it was a lie. His hands shook for the first time in years. The room felt too small. Too tight. If the diagnosis was false, then the pregnancy. The woman. His breath left him in a sharp rush. She had been telling the truth. The realization did not come gently. It slammed into him with brutal clarity. He had not just rejected her. He had destroyed her. Called her names. Dragged her from his world. Erased her without mercy. And she had been carrying his child. His only heir. A future he believed impossible. Rage rose again. But this time it turned inward. At his father. At the doctor. At himself. Self-loathing wrapped tight around his chest. He had become the very monster he told himself he was protecting the world from. 2 weeks. That was how long it took to find her. 2 weeks of sleepless nights. Of driving men harder than ever. Of following faint trails that ended in quiet places. When her location came in. A small coastal town far from the empire. Far from fear. He stared at the name on the report. Read it again. And again. She had chosen safety. Peace. For their child. He did not call. Did not send men. For once power felt useless. He drove himself. Through the night. Hands tight on the wheel. Every mile stripped something from him. When he arrived, the town felt wrong. Too open. Too calm. He found the place easily. A small shop. Warm light. Her laughter drifting through glass. She was there. Alive. Pregnant. Happy in a way he had never given her. The moment she saw him, the world stopped. Fear replaced joy. Her hand flew to her stomach. Instinctive. Protective. He took a step forward. Heart pounding. She took one back. I know the truth now, he said. His voice rough. Unfamiliar. The lie about my diagnosis. It was false. Her eyes hardened. You do not get to speak to me, she said. I called you a liar, he continued. I was wrong. You called me a gold digger, she whispered. You took everything from me. The weight of that truth nearly broke him. Before he could speak again, pain crossed her face. Sharp. Sudden. She bent forward, gasping. One hand gripping her belly. Something is wrong, she whispered. The world tilted. In that moment, power meant nothing. Reputation meant nothing. Only one truth remained. The child he had denied. The heir he had never believed in. Was coming. And he might lose everything before he ever earned the right to say the word father. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and salt air. Too clean. Too small. Too real. She was rushed past him on a narrow bed. Her face pale. Jaw clenched. Eyes wild with pain and determination. He followed until a nurse stopped him with one firm hand. You wait here. The words cut deeper than any threat. For the first time in his life, he obeyed without protest. He stood alone in the hallway. Hands empty. Suit stained with dust from the drive. Power stripped away piece by piece. Behind the closed doors, her cries rose and fell. Each sound a blade. Each breath she fought for, reminding him of everything he had taken from her. Men like him were not meant to wait. Waiting was weakness. Waiting was what happened to people without control. Yet here he was. Helpless. He pressed his back against the wall. Closed his eyes. For the first time allowing memory to surface. Her standing in his office. Her voice steady when she said she was pregnant. The way he had looked at her like an enemy, instead of a woman asking for truth. The words gold digger echoed again and again. Poisonous. Irreversible. Hours stretched. Time lost meaning. A nurse passed and looked at him with curiosity, not fear. She did not know his name. Did not care who he was. In this place, he was just another man pacing. Another future father waiting for news. That terrified him more than any rival ever had. Inside the room, she fought alone. Breathing through pain. Holding on to strength she did not know she still had. She thought of the town. The bakery mornings. The quiet kindness that had rebuilt her. She thought of the promise she had made to protect this child. No matter what. When exhaustion threatened to pull her under, she refused. This child would not arrive into fear. Outside, he slid down into a chair. Head in his hands. The empire felt distant. Small. He prayed without words. Without faith. Just raw desperation. Let them live. That was all he asked. When the door finally opened, he stood so fast the chair fell backward. The sound echoed too loud. The doctor stepped out. Face tired. Eyes steady. The baby is here. The words did not register at first. A boy. His knees buckled. A son. His chest tightened so hard he could barely breathe. She is stable, the doctor continued. The baby is small but strong. He is breathing on his own. Relief crashed over him, violent and consuming. Tears came without warning. Uncontrolled. Undignified. He did not wipe them away. He was allowed to see the child, through glass only. That was the rule. He approached slowly, as if afraid the moment would disappear. Inside the small room, a tiny body lay wrapped in blue. Fists clenched. Face scrunched in protest at the world. Dark hair. His hair. Something inside him broke open. That was my son. The heir he never believed could exist. The future he had denied. He pressed his palm to the glass. Felt nothing. Yet felt everything. I am sorry, he whispered. I did not know how to be anything else. Behind him, footsteps approached. She stood there. Weaker. But unbroken. You do not get to touch him, yet she said. He turned slowly. met her eyes. "I know. I will wait." The words surprised them both. Waiting was no longer weakness. Waiting was the only proof of change he had left to give. He stayed in the town when every instinct told him to leave. The empire called. Problems stacked. Men waited for orders. He ignored them all. For the first time, power felt irrelevant. What mattered was behind a thin wall and a pane of glass. Each day he returned to the clinic, sat in the same chair, spoke to the same nurses who did not know his name. They called him sir. Nothing more. He accepted it. She did not come out at first. Messages were sent through others. Boundaries drawn clean and firm. You can see the baby through the window. You cannot enter the room. He agreed without argument. Through the glass, he watched his son sleep. Wake. Cry. Stretch tiny fingers toward a world that did not yet know him. He memorized everything. The way the baby curled his hand. The sound of his breath. The strength in something so small. Each moment carved into him deeper than any scar. At night, he stayed in a small hotel near the harbor. The room smelled of old wood and sea air. Nothing like his penthouse. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to waves instead of sirens. Memories surfaced without restraint. The doctor telling him he was sterile. His father's voice saying attachments get men killed. The woman standing in his office shaking but honest. He had believed the lie because it suited him, because it justified the walls, because it excused the emptiness. Now there was no excuse. On the third day, she finally agreed to see him. The nurse led him to the door. Stopped. Looked at him with warning. Do not raise your voice. Do not stress her. He nodded. Quiet. When he stepped inside, the room felt fragile. Light filtered softly. Machines hummed. She lay in the bed pale but composed. The baby sleeping beside her. Her eyes met his. No warmth. No fear. Just distance. You can sit, she said. But you do not get to speak first. He sat. Minutes passed. Silence stretched. Not empty. Heavy. I believed I was broken, he said finally. I believed nothing good could come from me. She did not respond. I called you names because I was afraid. Because it was easier to destroy you than face the truth. Her jaw tightened. You destroyed my life, she said. You took my work. My safety. My dignity. I know. The words felt inadequate. But they were honest. I am not here to ask forgiveness. I am here to take responsibility. That caught her attention. I will not use my name. My money. My power. I will not take him from you. I will earn the right to stand near him. Her eyes flicked to the baby. You think that is enough, she asked. No, he replied. But it is a start. She studied him. Searching. You were my worst fear, she said quietly. The proof that men with power never chain. He swallowed. Then let me prove you wrong. Another silence. Finally she spoke. You stay in this town. You live like everyone else. You show up without demanding. One mistake. One threat. One lie. And we disappear. He did not hesitate. I accept. When he stood to leave, she stopped him. You can come tomorrow. For 1 hour. The words landed like mercy. Outside the clinic, the sky was heavy with clouds. Rain began to fall. He stood there letting it soak through his clothes. For the first time in his life, he was not running an empire. He was learning how to wait. And in that waiting, something inside him shifted. Power no longer felt like control. It felt like restraint. And the most dangerous man in the underworld began to understand that redemption was not taken. It was earned. Slowly. Quietly. One moment at a time. The hour she gave him felt shorter than any deal he had ever negotiated. He arrived early, sat on the edge of the chair, hands open, empty. When she placed the baby in his arms, for the first time the world tilted. He had held weapons. He had held men by their collars. He had never held anything that fragile. The baby shifted. A small sound escaped his mouth. Not a cry. Something softer. His chest tightened. He did not trust his voice. She watched closely, every muscle ready to pull the child back. You support his head, she said. Calm. Firm. He nodded. Adjusted. Learning. The baby settled. A strange quiet filled the room. In that moment, the empire vanished. There were no enemies. No borders. No threats. Just weight. Warmth. Life. This is Owen, she said. The name struck him harder than he expected. She did not use his name. She did not ask permission. The child was not a symbol. Not a claim. He was hers. Owen, he repeated softly. The baby opened his eyes briefly. Dark. Searching. For a second, he thought the child saw him. Not the man. Not the past. Just presence. The hour ended too soon. She took Owen back without hesitation. Not cruel. Just careful. Tomorrow, she said. He nodded. Days became routine. He arrived. Left. Never pushed. He learned to change diapers under instruction. Learned the exact temperature of bottles. Learned that patience was not passive. It was discipline. The town watched him. At first with suspicion. Then curiosity. He fixed a broken railing at the harbor. Helped an old man carry crates. Sat quietly in the back of the bakery with coffee he did not finish. No one knew who he had been. That anonymity felt like penance. At night, the empire demanded attention. Conflicts flared. Men questioned his absence. He delegated. Redirected. Let go. Power began to loosen its grip. One evening, she joined him on a bench outside the clinic. Owen asleep between them. The sky bled orange into the water. Why did you stay, she asked. He did not answer immediately. Because leaving is easy, he said. Staying means facing what I destroyed. She considered that. I do not trust you, she said. I know. I do not know if I ever will. He accepted it. Trust is not owed, he replied. It is built. She looked at him then. Really looked. Not as a king. Not as a monster. As a man trying. Something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But possibility. That night he sat alone in his small room. No guards. No walls. He thought of the boy sleeping a few streets away. Of the woman who had survived him. He understood something then. The air he had obsessed over was not just blood. It was choice. And for the first time in his life, he chose differently. The real test had not been surviving power. It had been learning how to live without it. The call came at dawn. Not from the clinic. Not from her. From the city. Voices layered with urgency. Deals unraveling. Territory contested. Men waiting for direction. For years, he would have answered without hesitation. Power had been instinct. Command reflexive. He looked at the phone. Then at the quiet street outside. The harbor still wrapped in morning mist. A place untouched by fear. He turned the phone off. Later that day she noticed. The absence of tension. The way he moved slower. As if something heavy had been set down. You are different, she said quietly, while Owen slept against her chest. He nodded. I stepped away. From the empire, she asked. From who I was, he replied. She did not respond immediately. They walked along the shoreline. Sand cool beneath their feet. Waves steady. I sold my control, he continued. transferred leadership, closed the accounts that tied me to violence. Her step slowed. You do not get to erase what you did, she said. I know. That is why I am not erasing it. I am ending it. She stopped walking, turned to face him. Why? The question was simple. The answer was not. Because every night I watched my son through glass. I understood something. Power never protected me. It only hid me. She searched his face, looking for arrogance, for manipulation. Found none. What do you want from us, she asked. He did not move closer, did not reach out. Time, he said. Time to prove I can be present without owning. Time to be a father before I ever asked to be anything else. Owen stirred. A small sound. A reminder. She closed her eyes briefly. I do not forgive you, she said. But I see you trying. That is all I ask, he replied. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. He remained. Consistent. Unassuming. He learned bedtime routines. Morning walks. Quiet joys. The town accepted him slowly. Not because of who he had been, but because of who he showed up as. One evening, as the sun dipped low, they sat on the same bench, Owen laughing between them. She spoke without looking at him. You did not choose us because you lost everything. He waited. You chose us because you finally understood what mattered. He nodded. Yes. She exhaled. Something old loosening. Then stay, she said. Not as a command. As an invitation. He swallowed. I am not leaving. She reached out then. Not to him. But she did not pull away when his hand brushed hers. The future remained uncertain. Fragile. Unwritten. But it was honest. And for the first time in his life, the man who once ruled without mercy chose love without ownership. Not because